Okay, so we're diving into some interesting relationship stuff today. You sent in this video, and it's about these red flag phrases, and it seems like you're ready to do some serious unpacking
Absolutely.
of what's going on beneath the surface.
And what's fascinating is how this video, while it's aimed at like high-value men,
Right.
it actually touches on like these universal insecurities and communication breakdowns that I think so many people experience
Yeah.
in relationships regardless of gender.
Yeah. It's definitely a bold approach, framing these phrases as instant deal breakers.
Right.
But let's be real, relationships are rarely that black and white.
Exactly. So let's dive into this first phrase, and I'm quoting directly from the video here.
Okay.
She talks about size. Now, the video uses this as like a cue to run for the hills, but I think we can unpack that a bit.
Right, because on the surface, it sounds like we're talking about, well,
Right.
and the video plays it that way, like suggesting the woman has unrealistic expectations or something.
But let's think about the pressure that women face
Oh, yeah,
regarding body image.
totally.
What if this statement reflects her own insecurities,
Right.
past hurts, or even just a struggle to communicate her needs
Yeah.
in a vulnerable way?
That's such a good point, because instead of assuming the worst, maybe this is a chance to have a compassionate conversation about body image,
Right.
about self-acceptance.
Absolutely.
After all, relationships thrive when both partners feel comfortable being open and honest about those vulnerabilities.
Precisely. This leads us to another one of the video's big red flags.
Okay.
When a woman says, "You're lucky to have me." Ooh. The video interprets this as pure arrogance, a sign that she's ready to trade up.
Ouch, that's kind of harsh, but
It is a little harsh.
I can see where someone might jump to that conclusion,
Yeah.
especially if they're already feeling a little insecure in a relationship.
Exactly. And that's where understanding the psychology
Yeah.
behind insecurity can be so insightful.
Hmm.
This phrase, while it might sound self-aggrandizing on the surface, could actually be a way of masking deeper insecurities,
Oh,
a fear of vulnerability,
right.
or even past relationship traumas.
So it's like she's trying to convince herself as much as she's trying to convince you.
Exactly.
Right. But instead of calling her out on it, what if we approached it with curiosity?
Right.
Like, hey, what makes you say that? Or is there something you're needing from me that you're not feeling right now?
Exactly. You're creating a safe space for her to open up about those underlying anxieties and insecurities.
Wow.
And that's where real intimacy starts to build.
Yeah.
When both partners feel seen and understood, not judged or dismissed.
Okay, this next one hits a nerve for a lot of people.
Okay.
She brings up your income.
Yeah.
The video presents this as like a surefire sign of a gold digger,
Right.
but I feel like there's more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Finances can be a huge source of stress in relationships. And how couples talk about money often reflects their communication style and their level of trust.
So instead of jumping to conclusions and assuming that she's just after your wallet,
Right.
maybe it's worth exploring what's really driving that conversation.
Absolutely. It could be that she's anxious about financial security,
Yeah.
worried about the future,
Right.
feeling a lack of control in other areas of her life, or maybe she's seen financial instability cause problems
Sure.
in past relationships and is trying to avoid repeating those patterns.
Right.
It's not necessarily about being materialistic. It could be about feeling safe and secure.
Right. And wouldn't a healthy relationship involve having those tough conversations about finances, setting shared goals,
Absolutely.
supporting each other's financial well-being?
Financial transparency and open communication are crucial
Yes.
for building a strong and sustainable partnership.
Okay, this next red flag phrase is one I'm sure a lot of people have experienced.
Yeah.
She tells you to change. The video makes it sound like any request for change is like a direct attack on your identity.
Right.
But I have a feeling you might have a different take on that.
Of course, it's important to distinguish between healthy requests for growth
Right.
and controlling or manipulative behavior.
Okay.
In a healthy relationship, partners should feel supported in their personal evolution.
Right.
And sometimes that involves making adjustments or adopting new habits.
So it's not about demanding a complete personality overhaul,
Right.
but rather having those honest conversations about areas where you could both potentially grow,
Yeah.
both as individuals and as a couple.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that relationships can be catalysts for positive change
I like that.
and personal development. But that change has to come from a place of mutual respect
Right.
and a desire to support each other's growth, not from a place of control or judgment.
So how do you know the difference?
That's a great question.
How can someone tell if a request for change is coming from a loving place versus a controlling one?
That's where paying attention to the tone and the delivery becomes crucial. Is it a gentle suggestion or a harsh criticism?
Right.
Is it framed as a way to improve the relationship or a way to control the other person?
Okay.
Those are important distinctions to make.
Okay, so we're talking about like recognizing the difference between a loving suggestion and then like a controlling demand.
Yeah, how do you actually address it if something feels off?
Right.
That's where open and honest communication comes in again. It's about being able to articulate your feelings without like blaming or attacking the other person. For example, instead of saying, "You're always trying to change me," you could say, "I feel a little pressured when you make comments about X because it makes me feel like I'm not good enough as I am."
Right, because phrasing it that way opens up like a dialogue rather than shutting it down.
Exactly.
You're inviting your partner to like understand your perspective instead of putting them on the defensive.
Exactly. It's about creating a safe space for both partners to express their needs and concerns without fear of judgment or rejection. And that takes practice, patience, and a willingness to be vulnerable with each other.
Speaking of vulnerability, this next red flag phrase really taps into those feelings of insecurity.
Right.
I'm busy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the video presents this as like a clear sign that she's just not that into you.
Right.
But we all know life can get pretty hectic, right?
Absolutely. We're all juggling multiple commitments, deadlines, responsibilities, and sometimes I'm busy really just means I'm overwhelmed right now and don't have the mental or emotional bandwidth to give you the attention you deserve.
Right.
You know?
So how do you navigate that as a couple? Because on one hand, you want to be understanding of your partner's busy schedule.
Right.
And respect their need for space.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you don't want to feel like you're constantly being pushed aside.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between being supportive and setting healthy boundaries.
Right.
And that requires clear and open communication about your needs and expectations. For example, you could say something like, "I understand you're really busy right now, but I miss spending quality time with you. Could we schedule in a date night next week?"
That's a great way to approach it because you're acknowledging their busy schedule,
right,
but also expressing your need for connection, intimacy.
Exactly. And by suggesting a specific time, you're making it easier for them to say yes and showing that you're willing to be proactive about making the relationship a priority.
Okay, this next phrase really plays into that like high value man narrative that the video's pushing.
Okay.
She brings up your weaknesses.
Yeah.
The video frames this as like a direct attack on your ego.
Right.
But I think there's a lot more nuance to unpack here, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Because on one hand, you do want a partner who uplifts and encourages you, who sees your strengths and celebrates your successes. But on the other hand, a healthy relationship also involves being able to give and receive constructive feedback.
So it's not about being completely immune to any kind of criticism or feedback.
Right.
But rather being discerning about where it's coming from.
Yes.
What the motivation behind it is.
Precisely, if it's coming from a place of love and a genuine desire to help you grow,
right,
then it can actually be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
For example, if your partner gently points out a pattern of behavior that's been causing conflict, like interrupting during conversations,
right,
that's not about putting you down. It's about strengthening the relationship.
It's about helping you become the best version of yourself, both for yourself and for the relationship.
Exactly. And that requires a level of trust and vulnerability that allows both partners to feel safe enough to express their concerns and support each other's growth.
This last red flag phrase from the video is interesting because it's not something directly said to the guy, but rather something he should apparently watch out for.
Okay.
A woman who's always talking about her exes.
Right. And like many of these phrases, it's all about context and intention. If someone's constantly comparing you to their ex or reminiscing about the good old days, that's definitely a red flag.
Yeah.
Right.
But what if it's just a casual mention here and there, like in the context of a funny story or a life lesson learned?
Exactly. It's about looking at the bigger picture. Is she still emotionally entangled with her ex?
Right.
Or is she simply acknowledging that her past relationships have shaped who she is today?
And I imagine that open communication plays a crucial role here as well.
Oh, absolutely.
If something feels off, it's always better to address it directly rather than letting suspicions fester.
Absolutely. Because often those imagined scenarios in our heads are far worse than the reality.
Right.
A simple conversation can clear up a lot of misunderstandings and prevent unnecessary conflicts.
It's interesting, right? Because like this video even though it's full of these like extreme red flag warnings,
Right.
it's kind of accidentally sparked like a really thought-provoking conversation.
Yes.
About communication, about empathy,
Right.
about just like the complexities of building healthy relationships.
It really has. And it highlights how important it is to approach relationships with a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset.
Okay, I love that you brought that up because I think a lot of people have heard that term thrown around,
Right.
but maybe don't fully grasp what it means like in the context of relationships.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to toss around buzzwords without really unpacking them. So in a nutshell, a fixed mindset in relationships assumes that things should be effortless
Right.
and conflict-free. And if they're not, it means you're with the wrong person.
Right, like you got the wrong one, you got to return to sender.
Exactly.
All right.
Versus a growth mindset recognizes that relationships take work communication, a willingness to evolve alongside your partner.
Right, it's about seeing those challenges and disagreements not as deal breakers.
Yes.
But as opportunities to learn and grow and like strengthen your bond as a couple.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective from, am I with the right person?
Right.
To how can we be better partners for each other?
Yeah, right.
Because that's where the real magic happens, when both partners are committed to growing together and supporting each other's evolution.
And that evolution often requires us to confront those like ingrained insecurities and communication patterns that might be holding us back,
Absolutely.
both individually and as a couple.
And that's why it's so important to cultivate self-awareness in relationships.
Right.
It's about recognizing our own triggers, understanding how our words and actions might be perceived by our partners, and being willing to take responsibility for our role in creating a healthy and fulfilling dynamic.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that communication isn't just about expressing our own needs and desires,
Right.
but also about being receptive to our partner's perspective, even when it's difficult to hear.
Exactly. Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do in a relationship is to set aside our own ego.
Wow.
Listen with an open heart and try to see the world through our partner's eyes.
Right.
Even and perhaps especially when their perspective differs from our own.
Right, because at the end of the day, relationships thrive on empathy, understanding,
Yes.
and a willingness to meet each other in the middle.
Beautifully said. And it's a continuous journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's about showing up for each other day after day with kindness, compassion, and a commitment to building a love that's resilient enough to weather life's inevitable storms.
To our amazing listener who sent in this video, thank you so much for sparking such like a rich and insightful conversation.
Yes.
We hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on navigating those so-called red flags.
Yeah.
And has empowered you to approach your relationships with a renewed sense of curiosity, compassion, and a commitment to open and honest communication.
And remember, the next time you encounter a bump in the road, instead of jumping to conclusions or assuming the worst, take a deep breath.
Right.
Lean in with empathy and see if you can turn that challenge into an opportunity for growth and deeper connection.
Because sometimes those red flags are really just invitations to communicate more effectively, to understand each other more deeply, and to build a love that's stronger and more resilient than ever before.
Beautifully said.
And on that note,
Yeah.
we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those conversations flowing.